Okay, so now we're about halfway through, and we've kind of talked about the basics of AI, what it is, math equation, how it learns, and then kind of like how to brainstorm use cases for it, because there's a lot of use cases. So we're going to go into kind of the deeper question here, which is should you, now that you have your use case picked out, let's say, now it's like, should you go and build your own model from scratch, or should you just use another company's? Um, and the answer is, oh no, oh that's not good. I don't know. I might have a virus or something, guys. I don't know about this. This is a bad one. um, all right, so yeah, so here's kind of the pros and cons breakdown, and featuring a special guest. So as far as using an existing model, this is definitely a newer option that that should be taken advantage of, because if this were 12 months ago, I probably wouldn't be giving this presentation, because the only thing you could do is build your own model. It kind of existed, but it was so small, it wasn't like it is today. So this is the newest option, and it's actually personally, I think it's way more efficient for most use cases. Like I said, yeah, it works very well for 90% of use cases. It's 10 times faster to get up and running, and it's 10 times easier to maintain. So there's a lot of pros with this side, and it's a very new thing. So when I talk about an existing model, it's like using ChatGPT basically. So it's like, should you build your own ChatGPT, or should you just pay the 2 cents every time to use ChatGPT's model? And the way it works out is that it's really efficient to just pay those 2 cents, and then because you can get it working in your business like immediately. So it's really dope. The custom model, like, the thing is, I would say only do this if you've already tried everything you possibly can with the existing models. This is definitely, like, the first option should always be an existing model. And we're going to get into why. The long story short, it's because building this is still very expensive, and like it's a lot cheaper than it used to be, like 5 years ago. But this is still like a very complicated process where like a lot of things can go wrong, and you could end up investing a ton of money into this, and if the person you've got working for you just doesn't have the right expertise to pull it off, like all that money is gone. So it's a bigger risk, and it's pretty expensive. But there is a time when you would want to use it, so we'll keep going into that. All right. Yeah, any questions from here? Well, the question, so does anyone know if, right, yes, that is true. Yeah, I mean, so that's a really good point. Like a llama model, and from what I understand, llama is basically like ChatGPT. They basically took ChatGPT's model, and then it's like you can run it internally in your own company. So I think that's a really good use case for that, and I think there's like Vanguard, for example, they won't let us use ChatGPT, and like none of the big companies like that are allowing it. So, but with a llama, like it would actually be usable. So I would say a llama, that's more on the existing side. Um,
And I was wondering, are large companies not allowing for using ChatGPT because you feed it the data, and now they have that data, and now they're worried about that data being leaked or being used to train the next version?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Not that it's wrong, but that.
Yeah, it's all security, like especially like a bank and stuff. Like they just can't have stuff like that leak. Even if OpenAI is saying that they're not training their models on it, like at a certain point you just can't do that. So something like an internal version would be perfect, and I think that's a great solution for that. All right, any other questions at this point? Okay. All right, just let me know. And let's see. So as far as existing models, let's kind of just to name some names of ones that are out there. Like I said, AI kind of breaks down into like 4 categories. So the first category is like text. So anything where you need to read text, you need to read PDFs, and then you need to generate text. The 2 best ones that I've seen so far are ChatGPT and then Claude. I've seen that I believe Claude can read like 75,000 words at a time. So if you need to read like really long manuals and like documentation, I would look at Claude and stuff like that. So this is kind of the first place. Once you figure out what your use case is, and then you figure out, does my use case use just text, or does it use a couple different one of these? Once you figure out it uses text, then I would just start researching ChatGPT and Claude and figuring out how to integrate them, as far as using an existing model. So image generation, we have like Midjourney, DALL-E 2, Stable Diffusion. So these are like the big names out there. Also, but if you Google this, you're going to find like 10 different companies that are in this space. And they're all going to be like specialized in a slightly different way, which is nice. So video generation, this one's pretty new, but in an earlier presentation, we saw that there's a Visla plugin for ChatGPT that can literally generate entire videos for you. So if you give it just like a script of like a YouTube video, it'll actually generate an entire YouTube video with graphics, with audio narration of the words. It's pretty incredible. So
Plugins free for ChatGPT, or you need to subscribe?
it's just $20 a month.
$20 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can add on. Is that part of it?
Yeah, and then I think you can use it as much as you want after just $20 a month.
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
Have you tried Runway yet?
No, I haven't tried Runway. It's for
The video generation. I was just wondering if it
heard of it. Yeah, has anyone or?
Yeah, so Runway has a, I mean, they're one of the leading companies in video generation. They are partners with Stability AI and image generation models, etc.
Okay.
They have Runway ML, you can tools for generating videos or editing videos using AI.
Nice. Okay, Runway. All right. Yeah. So Runway. So yeah, and this is definitely a newer kind of part of the space. This is probably like maybe in the past like 2 or 3 months that this kind of exists. So this is very new, and probably the newest of the 4. So that's a good thing. If your use case involves generating video, that's a really good thing because it's the newest one. And then like audio generation. So similar, but some of them are like 11 Labs, which Micah has shown earlier. And then again, Visla, because Visla does video and audio. And so like I said, when you realize that you're like, okay, I need audio generation, that's the service I'm going to provide, then just Google AI audio generation like APIs. And we'll go over APIs a little bit more here. But audio generation AI models, and then you'll get like a handful of companies that will do it for you. All right, so now we're going to go into, so an API. An API, this is how you use an existing algorithm most of the time. An API is like well, it's like a company builds a model themselves, and then what they do is they put like a URL, like a website address on attached to this model, and all you need to do is just type in the website like send your information to their website in a certain package, and then they will do the predictions for you. Like you'll use that model, and then they'll send it back to you. And then they'll charge you like 2 cents. So this is how to do it for ChatGPT. And like I said, the code is, you know, it's a little simplified here, but this is really it. So like in 8 lines of code, we can say, what's interesting is that in their API, there's often like a lot more things you can do with it. You can tweak certain things. So like, for example, basically what this is just saying is that we're actually setting a like system message. So we can prime ChatGPT to be a certain type of assistant, so that when like just right off the bat. So if you want like a specialized kind of chatbot, in the API you can just tell it exactly what kind of chatbot you want it to be, and then as soon as a person uses it, it'll be like a totally different thing than ChatGPT. So that's kind of cool. And let's see. So we're using GPT-4. So that's the latest one. The model, messages, and then we're just sending this is just called like a post request. It's just sending a message to the API's URL, which is the website address. So if we look at that, I've actually got like a live demo that we can look at, which is right here. Yeah, so this is in VS Code. This is literally what we were just looking at. So here's what I told it to do. I said, you're a helpful assistant who cracks jokes and tastefully markets my Instagram marketing agency, InstaSales. So it's kind of cool. So now it's primed. So now if someone interacts with my chatbot on my website, it will naturally like nudge them towards certain products based on what they're talking about. And then, so now the user goes on my website and they say, hey, I'm looking to build a brand on social media about the latest trends in AI. What should I post about? And so on the, you know, this is kind of the way it works on the back end. And if you have any sort of like developer on your team who's like a web developer, using an API is like super common, and they'll know exactly how to do this. For a developer, it's like once you can use like one API for like Google Analytics or whatever, then you know how to use them all, because they're all very similar. So this is a very like easy thing to do for any like friends you have that are developers, or anyone on the team already can set this up. Now, yeah, so here's the response, just to show that it works. And yeah, so it doesn't look as pretty as like ChatGPT, but
So you're going through OpenAI, and it's charging you 2 cents every time you do this, connecting to that API?
yeah, exactly. And the price has to do with like how long the message is, things like that. I mean, this is probably like 0.0001 cents because the message is so small. But it's just kind of like it's just using a AI and like a pay per use, you know, kind of way. And you're using like the best model in the world, you know, one of them. So it's like extremely efficient. So anyway, so yeah, here's the response. So just to show you, like, you know, absolutely building an AI-centric brand on social media is a fantastic idea. Kindly note that we aren't called InstaSales for nothing. We guarantee Insta success. So here are a few ideas for you to consider. Yeah, so then, and now it just gives the ideas. And then it's got another joke down here. And selling stories, not products. Keep that as your mantra. Okay. So, yeah. So it's pretty sweet. So yeah, it's the easiest thing. Like setting up an API to use a model is a very, very easy thing. very quick way to get started. Let's see. Okay. Any questions? Any questions here?
I have a question. Do you know OpenAI, as I understood, they opened up GPT-4 API for developers, right? So you don't need to apply again for with your idea to get the API, right?
Yeah. Yeah. As far as I know, it's open to.
GPT-4, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I saw that like a couple days ago, and I was surprised they do it. So decided to ask.
yeah, yeah. I looked it up too, and I'm pretty sure it's open to everyone.
Do you use?
I do now. I do now because I just realized that the API, the model is actually 6 months newer. So like if you use the website, it's like I only understand things until September of 2021. If you send it through this, it's actually all the way up until March of 2022. So it's got 6 more months of information in it, which kind of makes sense that like they're always going to keep the API more up to date than the website because it just moves faster on the back end. So it's kind of cool. So that's a big plus.
Open public, what does that mean? Like before it wasn't open to public? No.
They basically they had a beta program where like you had to sign up with your account. You're like sign up to be an early user of the API.
Now you don't have to pay, or you do have to pay.
Um,
That now anybody can use it. It's
Now
just
they opened up an access for everybody who paid at least $1 and at least $1 to the developers platform at least 1 month ago, something like that. Something like that. It is written on their website. So
yeah.
did you get the access to GPT-4? I mean API.
Yeah. I mean, I have it right.
Right.
So the fact that this works and then also, if you want to dig deeper into this, I haven't tested it yet, but it looks like there's a GPT-4 model in the API that can do like 32,000 words at a time,
Yeah.
but that doesn't exist on the website.
But they still, the 32K model is not opened up for public, as I understand, right?
You're correct. Yeah, they kind of release things like a little bit at a time. But yeah, so once you start to use the API, like you'll be ahead of the curve because this is like their testing ground where they always release things here first, which is kind of cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How is this different than just feeding information to like a program like BobPress?
Like WordPress, you're saying?
Like BobPress?
What's BobPress?
Like where you make those chatbots like that, but without the API or like ChatGPT?
Oh, where you say
Where
like
you just feed the documents like kind of like that, and then you ask.
BobPress. Well, BobPress might be using one of these models.
They are, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
They are.
BobPress. Is this how you spell it, or?
No, BotPress, like bot, like
Okay.
BOT.
Nice. BobPress. Okay, yeah, generative AI for. Okay. Yeah, there you go. This is exactly what they're doing. So they're just sending. You know, when you're like, oh, here's my company information. They send that to ChatGPT, right? And then when you ask a question, like they ask ChatGPT. So they're doing exactly this. So the thing is, you like, it's like, think about it like this. It's not really a competitor because there's always like a company that's super technical and like just masters the technical side, but just isn't able to like market it out and actually get it out to people. That's right. Yeah. So there's always kind of the companies that are extremely good at marketing that can actually bring people to the technical companies. So I don't think it's a competition, right? I think it's like yeah. Yeah, you're basically just like, you're just making it easier for people to, right. Yeah, like if you type in AI chatbot, this might come up first before, yeah, anyway. So it's all, and obviously like ChatGPT is getting paid their 2 cents every time you use it, so they're happy. That's, you know, that's their model is working great. And then you're charging, you might be charging $5 on top of that, right? But
Is there, when you're talking about APIs, is there a way that you can use two different, like let's say you need ChatGPT, but you also need Midjourney? Can you use two different ones for one product?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, because APIs, I mean, you could use 100 APIs if you wanted to. You would just kind of like imagine, oops, you know, it looks something like this where you just like copy it and you'd say this is the mid journey, and then like, you know, this is the and you would just chain them together, like pretty much like that. So yeah, you can use like 100 different APIs if you wanted to. You could actually, yeah, it's an interesting idea as far as that. So, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, so you can set it up in like eight lines of code, more or less. And yeah, so if we go back, so that's how you use an API. It's literally that simple. On the other hand, oh, that's not it. Does anyone want to check out the backpack again? No. Hold on. Oh my God, that's a beautiful baby right there. All right, so yeah, so we're talking about how do you actually build these, how do you like get these into operation. So now I'm gonna like go through the full-on kind of breakdown of how simple this is versus how much work is involved on this side. So this is kind of a graphic. Imagine you just split this graphic in half in the middle, and as you can kind of see, like on the left-hand side, it's all I'm trying to show is the idea that there's a lot of lines of code that go into the data collection part of setting up a custom algorithm. There's a lot that goes into it's called pre-processing, where you're cleaning all this. You take one like hour-long video file, but now you have to split it into like 2-second chunks. That's like 50,000 2-second chunks. So there's like a lot of, that's called pre-processing. Sometimes you're like cleaning it, you're like brightening up the image, darkening it. There's like a lot of stuff that goes into that to really make it work. And then you have to train the model. It's like another 300 lines of code, like at least. The models that I'm working with are like, you know, they're like 1,000 to 2,000 lines per each of these steps. So this is kind of, you could get it to work with something like this, but so yeah, there's just like a lot of moving parts when you build it custom, and then you have to set up your own API instead of using someone else's, and you have to, what an API, you know, kind of this idea of an API is like, remember it's a website address. So what you have to do is you have to rent a computer that's in the cloud, like on Google's cloud, and you have to keep that computer running 24/7. And so you have to pay to keep that computer running so that you can send messages, like website messages, into that computer and run your own algorithm from that computer in the cloud. So like there's also cost associated, you know, because with running that anyway. And then you've got model prediction code. Post-processing is like you're cleaning up the response. So kind of the main point I'm trying to make here is there's quite a bit of work involved in this. And I was trying to come up with like a ballpark based on like experience of like how much something like this can cost. I mean, depending on, I would say the short answer is depending on what you're trying to build, it will make a difference. But if you really want like a good algorithm that actually can beat an existing algorithm, my guess is you're going to need at least 3 like machine learning engineers on a team. They're going to need 6 to 12 months. And they're going to be asking for like 200,000 or 250 a year to be at this level of expertise, to be able to build this on a 3-man team. My ballpark is you're looking at like 750K over the course of a year. So it's doable, but it's still expensive. I mean, 5 years ago, that would have been like, you would have paid like $20 million to actually pull this off. Today, it's less than 1 million. So the price is going down because we're figuring out how to do it better and better, but it's still hella expensive. So you really want to be like sure that, you know, making that kind of an investment would actually be worth it, because a lot of times it's really not. Because when you're, you know, think about it, it's like if you're going to build your own, you have your team of 3 engineers who are now competing against like 10,000 engineers at OpenAI. And it's like, do you really want to like compete? Do you need to compete? Do you want to compete? Probably not. You probably just want to use what's already working really well and then focus on kind of like your core business. Unless your core business is AI, right? But that's kind of different. So that's kind of the general idea there is don't go this route unless you absolutely have to. Definitely just use an API. It's way more efficient. I mean, this is very simple for any web developer to like integrate. So it's kind of that. Any questions here? Keep it rolling.
AI is training AIs. Like, where I know it says you shouldn't use other models to train. I think they use that in their little disclaimer
Yeah.
on that, but that's not something that can fast track building out a model.
It can. It can. It definitely can. That would be the way I would recommend how to do it. I was messing around with it the other day, and I just took an Excel file, gave it to ChatGPT, and was like, hey, can you build me a model that can predict, you know, this column? And it's really good at it. So that would lower the cost. That would definitely lower the cost. It's a good point. So, you know, maybe the ballpark is in between, like, you still need someone who's really good to put it all together, but maybe the ballpark's between like 250 over the course of a year to like 750, and it just depends on what you're building. Now you can build a proof of concept for cheaper than that. That's for sure. So if you really have a use case, I'd love to talk about it more, right? But I'm just trying to put out like kind of a ballpark number just to give like a reference to it. But with ChatGPT, that number might have just gone down like way a lot, right? So it's kind of, that's a good point. Still, it's definitely more complicated than just using. All right. So now let's look at some cost-benefit analysis. The most important, oh no, there he is, just floating through space. Jesus. Cherokee cage, God, comes in. All right, so yeah, so let's figure out kind of like, let's run some numbers and let's see what we might be looking at. So going off the example of the Instagram marketing business, which I may have gotten that from you. Yep. So let's say, you're doing like 15 million in revenue, and you know, these are just ballpark numbers, but like let's say you're making 5 million a year in profit. So use your own numbers here, and then use, but this is kind of how I would start to do the calculation. So if we look at an existing algorithm, we have a use case, right? And again, 5 million profit, just putting it there so it's easy to remember. Let's say we expect like a 20% increase in profit, or like value accuracy, right, from using an existing algorithm. But we're also looking at a negative, you know, $30,000 in like development cost in a year to integrate it, and we're looking at maybe like $30,000 in a year to actually pay that 2 cents every time to use the existing AI. So obviously these kind of depend on like your scale and what you're doing. That API cost will be per usage. So if you implement this, you're looking at like a net gain of like 940,000 in profit, you know, over the next year. And this is just kind of hitting home the point that a custom alg is just more expensive, and is a lot of times not really worth it. So 5 million. Now, yeah, I mean, let's say you can squeeze like an extra 3% out of a custom alg, then your profit's going to go up slightly, but like the dev cost is a lot higher, and so you're also going to be paying to like rent the cloud computers. So that's not a big cost, but it is like a cost. So you're only looking at like a net gain of like 370 by like going over and above and like building your own algorithm. And it's just going to take way longer to get into production. So as you can tell, I'm pretty psyched up about these existing algs and the APIs. But so yeah, so here's an example. And then like I said, like this is how I would start to do the cost benefit analysis. And then obviously these numbers can be different depending on what you're building and stuff like that. But these are like the four, right? Like the four numbers I would kind of like start with. However, but then in example 2, let's 10x this. If you're like Anna's company, and let's say you're doing. Now, let's imagine like a way bigger company, and let's say you're doing like 150 million in revenue, and you're doing like 50 million in profit. So, with scale, things can actually change. So again, if we're just using a ChatGPT, let's imagine it gives us a 20% increase, 30K developer cost, 30K API cost, and so we're looking at like a net gain of 9.9 million over the course of the next year. On the other hand, if we build our own, and we can get our model to be even better in our specific use case than ChatGPT's, then even with the heavy development cost and the compute cost, it's actually good. This is kind of the point where it flips. And so at a certain point, you do get like an economy of scale, and that 3% better being specialized to your use case will actually add to your profit and your revenue. Like it'll outweigh the cost of developing it. So it's really about scale. It's not about Nicolas Cage. It's just about scale. It is about Nicolas Cage, but we'll get to that. But yeah, just as an idea, any thoughts here, questions?
3% here makes not much difference, right? I think have to have 10x scale. I think the developer cost still would be like same even if you're at 10x scale or 10x bigger property. You had this
Well, it would be pretty similar. I mean, it might go up a little bit. Well, the thing is, like building a model, the way I look at it is like building a model is just building a model. So it doesn't matter if, most of the time, it doesn't really matter if,
I get the idea. At the scale, it just at one point it will just be more profitable to do your own.
yeah, exactly. Right, assuming you're better.
Well, for your specific use case, it could be.
Yes, exactly.
But it's a risk. You're right.
Yeah, so it's like technically if you wanted to build like, I don't know, like some fantasy character, if you wanted to build like a Harry Potter experience chatbot, and you literally just, all you did was train it on all the Harry Potter books that have ever been written, technically it could be a lot better than ChatGPT at acting like it's Harry Potter and having a conversation like it's Harry Potter. So could be. It's that's the thing is like it's kind of up in the air. So you're gonna take a gamble. You're gonna take a big gamble to maybe get a couple % better. Like what I've learned is it's for most use cases it's not worth it. Like for some it is. But so yeah, it's just a thought, and just a thought here. And then I would say most of the time the cost to develop a model is pretty much is similar, because it doesn't really matter. Like the model, if we did this Harry Potter example, we trained it on like all the Harry Potter books, all the Harry Potter lore. It doesn't really matter like how many people are using that model, because the model's already built. So it doesn't matter if 100 million people are using it or 10 people are using it. Like the model cost is pretty similar. It will go up a little bit, maybe like 10 or 20%, but that stays pretty fixed.
So let me think. So you got ChatGPT, and you can currently add, hey, read this information. I know it's small, but you can read this information, right? And that's kind of going into the system. Is that being trained? I mean, it's not using an internal training, but it is looking at a pattern there, right? Do you think ChatGPT 5 is now going to introduce more space where now you can put in a lot more data and then use that in their system? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's where it's going.
This and we're investing in creating, but are these guys going to outdo us really quickly, and then we're behind? I don't know, just trying to think of the future of that.
Well, it's like no, it's a good point. I mean, yes. I think ChatGPT is going to continue to get way better and way better, and then their idea is each model will be able to accept a larger and larger basis of text. So you could take a whole like refrigerator, like a whole car manual, put it in, and then boom, it's like you can just have a chat bot with a Ford 2020 Raptor. So it's going to continue to get better and better, but the thing is, it's like when you here's a good example. When you go to build like an Instagram marketing company, do you worry about using a Mac computer? Or do you try and build your own computer just to like do marketing? No, right? So like you want Macs to get even better, because like you do all your work on a Mac, right? So that's kind of the idea here, where it's like at a certain point you're not going to build your own computer to then start a marketing company or whatever. So it's like so at a certain point you're just not competing, with them at that level. Stuff like that, right? So it's like how deep. The same thing. Like if you wanted to start a car rental business, do any car rental businesses build their own cars, right? Like no, because it's not. They don't really compete like that. It wouldn't. That would be like. It wouldn't really be smart. Like you just rent out other companies who are really good at building cars, and then you're really good at renting them out, and you kind of just have that distinction, right? So I think that's how I would look at it. It's a good point, though. Any other thoughts on it, Anna?
When you were speaking back to open APIs,
Mm-hmm.
the process that you were showing us, is that what's considered fine tuning?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when you create that like system message, yeah, you're fine tuning it.
Okay.
So you can do more than that, but that's kind of the easiest. That's the basic level. So fine tuning it, yeah, is like when you prime it with information. For example, in that system message, you could send your whole company's like FAQ, frequently asked questions, as the primer, and then now the chatbot just knows your whole FAQ immediately, and that's like immediately. Now it's not training it, but you've just fine-tuned it to work on your companies, like FAQs. So I think we're so we're getting towards the end here. So pretty much just reviewing. How long was that? Nice. That was like an hour or so. But yeah, so it's pretty much just review, and then we can talk more. Basically, we went over like an overview of how these algorithms, like what they are, man-made math equations, and then how they learn. They learn with examples given to them by humans. And then we talked about how to pick a use case based on like what is the most expensive part of your business. Focus on that first, or what is the like highest earning potential you see in the market. Either one. Went over the pros and cons of using existing companies' AIs versus like building your own. And went over the build process. And we went over a cost-benefit analysis. So it really just depends on scale. And here's another good example on that point of, are you just like feeding your competitor? Are you just giving them money to be better? Like Amazon, for example, did not sell their own products for like 30 years. They just sold other people's products. They just focused on being a really good website that could handle that traffic, sell other people's products. It wasn't until they became literally the biggest company in the entire world that they started to build their own products and sell their own products for the first time. And I think that's kind of where that scale kind of flipped, where it was like, okay, now it's actually worth it to invest all those resources. But so that's where it's like, unless you're literally like one of the biggest companies in the world, like just focus. I think it's just better to focus on, just like Amazon did, just focus on your niche and selling everyone else's products. So I think that's just kind of the example of Amazon there. What's up, Grant?
Yeah, so I have two questions.
Yeah.
So that means, are you telling me that you can do a system message for the chatbot to be Nicolas Cage?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. It's
And
already
then
done.
the second question is, if you were trying to teach other people the self-taught route for machine learning, how to learn machine learning, what kind of steps would you take, or tell other people to take?
Yeah. So I mean, if you wanted to become like there's two paths, right? There's like, if you want to be a business owner who knows a lot about AI, there's kind of this path. And then if you want to be like a developer who writes AI, so there's kind of two different paths. Figure out which kind of path you want to go down. And yeah, and so on one hand, if you want to be a business owner that's really good at AI, I would focus on just looking at all the different use cases that are available. So like, this is kind of where I started, and I went, there's a lot of like AI conferences and stuff that are all like, they're virtual, so you can just like purchase the sessions for like $200 or $300, but you get access to all the recordings from the whole like conference in London, or there's one here, right, because we're in Miami, and stuff like that. Like New York has them, right? They're all over. So if you purchase sessions to a conference, that's really cool. That's where you'll see like the newest possible use cases. That's kind of where I started. That's a good place to start. So I would focus on use cases because it'll spark your mind for like stuff that you're doing in your current business. And yeah, and then if you're going the development route, then I mean, at this point, I would just talk to ChatGPT, like
Can't go wrong.
just tell it whatever you need. It's yeah, ChatGPT. I mean, because I've been learning code. I've been learning more code. Like with ChatGPT, I built an iPhone app. Like I don't know how to write Swift, or I didn't before, but in 3 weeks I was able to build an iPhone app and an Apple Watch app in 3 weeks. Just going back and forth with ChatGPT. So, and I would
The back end or something.
say it again.
You wrote the front end, with ChatGPT, but you wrote the back end yourself
No, front end and back end.
Oh, front end, back end.
Yeah. So what I did is I just did a like an hour-long crash course on Swift, and that was it. That was all I needed. It was like 1 hour long of just like, okay, this is this is that, and then I was just arguing with ChatGPT the whole time because it would send me some code, and I'd be like, why is this question mark there? Like this looks like shit, and then it'd be like, and then it would be like, well, yeah, it does, but like it did. It agreed with me a lot of times.
Well, you have to be a developer to be able to do what you did, right? Like not everybody can do what you did.
Well, right, exactly. Because it's like, yeah. But even if I was just getting started, and let's say I wanted to learn Python, um, I would probably talk with ChatGPT a lot, and probably just get a lesson plan from ChatGPT, and then I would code with ChatGPT. And anytime I didn't understand, I would be like, why did you write this line? Well, that's what I ask a lot of times. Would this code work without this line? Why or why not? And then it really, it's like instantly I can just understand like what's actually useful in the code and stuff. And yeah, so I would talk to ChatGPT. And then I would do a formal boot camp. So I would start with ChatGPT, go back and forth, and then like I did personally was right before I got hired, I did like a 3-month like formal boot camp that was like part-time, and it was like online with other people. I feel like learning with other people is like super important. So I would do those two things, ChatGPT and a boot camp. Yeah.
So if you want to kind of optimize data, right? If you're getting feedback on something, is there a way to kind of bridge the gap and not build your own model from scratch, which sounds like an absolute nightmare, but to still kind of train it on what works best with the results for when it's done? Would there be a middle
Yeah.
ground that would work best for that?
Yes, I would say there is a middle ground. So, and probably, I mean, probably when you think about using,
These are the most successful examples, and you'll feed it back in. I assume that the data constraints, the 15 pages or the 75 pages, are going to, for all intents and purposes, go away over the next year, right? It's going to get big enough that, at some point when it gets to 500 pages or 1,000 pages, whatever, like,
yeah,
enough for almost everything.
yeah,
Not every use case on Earth, but for the vast, vast, vast majority. Right?
yeah.
But how would you do that feedback loop to have it improve? How would you set that up?
Well, yeah. So I guess when I talk about using an existing AI, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about taking one that already exists and then giving it things like that system message that kind of specializes it for your use case. So I mean, you could just use ChatGPT right out of the box for some use cases, but a lot of them, like you probably the value is in like the way that you fine tune it with your system messages and the way that things like that. The type of model that you use, like for example, someone who's using ChatGPT that can only do like 4,000 words at a time that business is not going to do as well as a company who's realized that you can use Claude AI to do 75,000. So it's a lot of like understanding, what models are out there, and just using the best one, understanding the developments, and then understanding like the whole skill of like how to fine tune it in the best way. I think is better to focus on fine tuning.
Do you have any tips on how to do the fine tuning, or what would be the best methodology?
It's going to depend on the algorithm. So yeah, because like a video algorithm, you're going to fine tune it differently than like a text algorithm. So yeah, once you figure out like which of the 4 categories it lands in, like text, video, image, or audio, then you can look up like audio AI fine tuning techniques. So fine tuning is like an important word as far as that.
Would that be from the prompt itself, or would that be from the data that you feed it?
It's kind of the same thing. The prompt is the data that you feed in, right? So, but yeah, we can talk more about that. It's basically fine tuning. Yeah.
Is there a way to privatize? Do you privatize the model? If you teach the AI model to do something that's really valuable to your industry, and you don't want other competitors to see what you're doing, or to take advantage of that? Is there a way to do that?
Um, I mean, like let's say you were fine tuning like a chat GPT. Technically, I think OpenAI is gonna. I don't know what their privacy kind of like boundaries are, but like technically they could see it if they really wanted to. Maybe they say that they don't look at it.
It's more other you don't want other people to see it. So you could take any model, for example, in an existing industry that's currently being developed, being run, and then you can tell ChatGPT or the equivalent to do it to replace people by doing it instead of you train it how to do it, and then you can basically replace the people who are currently doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you want to own that and not let anyone else have access to that, so that you can own that
Oh
AI
yeah, yeah,
application, how do you do that?
yeah. So as far as I understand it, the way they used to do it, and I'll take this out here. Just to look at this, the way they used to do it is that they would give you your own URL, this website address. Yeah, this right there that comes up. So they used to give you your own website address, and they'd be like, all right, this is your model. Only you have access to this. Like it's done. I don't think that they're doing that anymore. But really, honestly, what you own would be. Now this is like a simplified version of this. Like this is just one line, right? Right here. But there's quite a lot that goes into this, and I'm not super familiar with how to fine tune all these different models. But I do know, like if I needed to know, then I would search how to fine tune like this model, and there's probably like a lot of blog posts and stuff on that, probably by the company themselves, because they want people to actually get use out of it. So maybe talk to them, like use them as support. Yeah, if you email them, reach out to them, get them on the phone and stuff, they'll probably tell you some really insider information, and they'll know how to keep your fine tuning safe, as safe as possible. Is what I would say. Yeah, I just know that like fine tuning is a thing for all of these, and it is the way that you specialize. I don't know exactly how to fine tune every single one of them, right? Because everyone's just a little different. But yeah. Yep.
Can you only fine tune off of the knowledge it already has? Because you had said, when she asked you a question about fine tuning, you had said it doesn't learn. So first you have to teach the system and then you fine tune?
Well, like if you think about like a machine learning model as like a cake, so what it's trained on is like the actual cake, like that's done, that's already made, and then the fine tuning is like just putting a layer of icing on top of it, if that makes sense. So the cake, everything it was officially trained on is still there, but you can put a layer of icing, your own like specialization on top of it. And so you're just adding like a little layer of information to what the rest of what it knows.
So is that like ChatGPT when you go in and you say, let me give you first the history of this company, and you put stuff in there, and then it talks to you, and then you add more stuff in there, but it remembers all the other stuff on top. So you're adding more to that layer, and it's kind of giving you data based on everything that you've already given it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's considered fine tuning. The thing is, 2-3 years ago, fine tuning was a different thing. It was a separate process. It was kind of involved, and they would give you your own model that had its own website address. It was a kind of a big deal to fine tune it. There was like more work involved. Nowadays, what you just said with just feeding it information in a couple chats worth of information, that's now what they consider fine tuning, because what they say is like the models are getting so good now that you don't have to like build your own. You just feed it a couple messages in the chat before, and that's really good enough for almost all the use cases, and that's now considered fine tuning a lot of times.
And you give it a persona. So say I want you to be this person, and I want you to give me the response as if you were talking to a 5-year-old, and and this is the industry, and here's some information about the kind of company that I'm working with, blah 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 blah, and now it's more specialized to what I just said, right?
Yep. Yep. So that's considered fine tuning
Just give an example.
sometimes.
Just give an example. Well, this is what worked. You sent out these messages. These were the most successful messages. Make it look like these 10 messages.
Exactly. So that's the the algorithms, and that's the thing. The existing algorithms, they're so good now that you don't have to go through this like crazy retraining process. You just give it a couple examples right on the surface, and it just picks it up. So fine tuning that's kind of the secret sauce, I would say, is in specializing it.
So you can say these three personas are funny, are considered funny, right? And then you can ask it, give me a caption for a brand or a company that wants a funny persona, and it would spit it out once you teach it the first time, like you said.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially if you say, give me one of the three I just gave you. Like if you remind it, it's like, hey, I just gave these three. Give me one of those three.
Okay, and that's where the more data that you give it, the more accurate it comes out, correct?
Like the more specialized it
The
is.
more specialized,
Yeah.
right? So if I give, again, I'm going to use the marketing because that's all I know.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, all these companies are considered to be elite.
Mm-hmm.
These are what elite companies are at, and then I ask it, give me an example of how an elite company communicates. The more examples of elite it has, it should be the closest to accuracy, right?
As long as all the companies are actually elite.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So like in my expertise, I know that these companies communicate that way. I'm teaching it. This is how they communicate. Now give me your own example of it, and it should.
Well, but there's also something you have to factor in, which is kind of the attention span of these models are kind of short right now. So like, it's kind of like, if you gave it like, let's say you gave it like 1,000 different examples, it might actually start to have trouble like remembering like what the original intent was. As the models get better and better, they'll get a much longer memory.
Okay. So.
Short seems to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you've probably seen that as you're talking to it. Like if you're having,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like talking to a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a person. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess it would be better to, in my case, to give it focus on one specific area instead of like as many categories.
I would just test that out yourself because no one really knows that.
Okay.
It's literally just a trial and error.
Okay.
Because the models are adapting over time. So like what's going to work best in August might actually like it'll have shifted a little bit by the time we get to like December, and then it'll shift again. So you're just going to be constantly kind of iterating against the model or with the model to see what works best as they evolve. Yeah. Yeah. Ryan, did you have a question? Or?
With understanding ChatGPT is this idea, what I'm trying to read and understand. It says it doesn't no longer need the data. It's already learned the mathematical logic behind the data. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's just using these parameters or whatnot to think. Is that accurate? Does that even make sense to me? Because normally we're used to data queries, Excel spreadsheet, and searches for information, blah, blah, blah. That's our normal thinking process. Saying that this model is beyond that and it has, like, I don't know, is that an accurate statement? Does it store all the data it was trained in as a database search, or does it have some type of mathematical patterns that it has found that says, logically thinking, these are the numbers and this is how I'm going to respond to certain
Yeah, no, yeah. So you're right. It actually is more. It's a more of a mathematical. It's a mathematical relationship. It's not like it's a specific database. It's honestly, it's like when we were talking about these things use calculus and linear algebra. Imagine like an Excel file of like 1,000 rows long and like 1,000 columns wide, and then every single like section, every single cell has a certain like number in it. And so like the way that this thing, when you train it, all these like 1,000 by 1,000 numbers are constantly like flipping and switching and trying to find the right combination. And then once it's trained, all those numbers are saved. And so that saved model file is just a file of like 1,000 by 1,000 numbers. And then when you when you ask it to do a prediction, what you do is you translate like the text. Your when you type in something, it translates that text into a certain string of numbers, and then those numbers run through this like 1,000 by 1,000 matrix of numbers, and then whatever pops out on the other side is literally it gets translated back into letters.
It's a forecast of that, which is kind of weird too. Once somebody said that they trained it on this language, they trained it on this language, suddenly it knew this language. Like because it got all again, that's again reading. I don't know what you read is always correct, but it's like how does it actually now because of the patterns that it learned, it's able to pick on something else. I don't know. These are things that
Yeah.
throw me off.
I would say that's pretty unlikely. Like I would say that it's not going to know something that it wasn't trained on. It just doesn't make sense as far as like the only things that it knows how to do are things that it's seen before, kind of thing. So
You don't think patterns somehow when you add mathematical patterns, when you add graphical patterns, and you put all these type of somehow they won't find other patterns or find other relationships that you didn't originally train it in, but now it's able to pick up because they see the logic. I don't know.
well, that's yeah. I mean, that's kind of talking about like AI becoming conscious at that level.
Conscious, sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's conscious. I mean, at this point, it's just it just knows how to regurgitate. Like I mean, it's read like 100 million web pages. It's read every Reddit post, every like Facebook post, every what do you call it, Wikipedia post, Amazon page. It's read everything on the internet. So it knows a lot of things. But yeah, but it's hard to say. Like at what point is it like sentient? It's to be determined, I guess. It's an interesting topic, but yeah, it really is just mathematical relationships, and yeah, the math is cool. Oh, in case. All right, in case if you guys want to take a second. Last thing I was going to show was just, oh yeah, so this is discussion. If you think of any other, I guess if there's no more questions, there's like one more thing I want to show, but Tad.
Where's it was PyTorch and those training things for training models? Use those libraries, PyTorch and what's the other one?
Yeah, TensorFlow.
TensorFlow. Yeah, there we go.
So it depends on what model, what your use case is. If you're working with, yeah, like a lot of times if you're working with just Excel sheets and it's just numbers in a sheet, then you use a library called sklearn, and that's kind of like that's the first one that ever came out back in like 2012ish, and it's these are like the really tiny ones that they still work, but they're like very simple models, and so yeah, so if you're using spreadsheets, then I would just stick with sklearn. And then there's, this handful of like 5 or 10 widely used models in that library. And I would just test them all. But then when you get into computer vision and stuff like natural language processing, So anything that has to do with text, images, or videos, that's where you start to use PyTorch and TensorFlow. So it's kind of just depends on the use case. And PyTorch and TensorFlow are the newer ones. And yeah, so they're the newer ones, and they're just for the video and audio kind of situations. And they're also like the same exact thing. So PyTorch and TensorFlow, like they're so similar at this point that it doesn't matter which one you use. They're just the same thing. It's like a Ford and a Chevy at this point. They're the same thing, you know.
Have you ever used them for like a project, like a big project?
Yeah, yeah. So if you compare them side by side, you probably heard of like the MNIST digit set or something. It's like
a training set.
yeah, exactly. So it's like if you want to recognize like digits.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What was the numbers? Like, tells you which ones are what numbers.
yeah, yeah. So I've built that model in PyTorch, and then what's cool is if you look at the same code to build that same model in TensorFlow, it's like almost the same. You know, if you go line by line, they're just doing the exact same thing with a different like wording.
And how long does it, I guess I'm trying to say, I guess it depends on use case, but what's the general formula for gauging how much it's going to cost to use PyTorch or TensorFlow to train a custom model? I guess it would be very use case dependent, but is there like a general, how much did it cost to do the MNIST thing?
Almost nothing. So you can train the MNIST like on your laptop, because it's only like 1,000 images, and they're like tiny images. So I would say there's no exact way to like gauge how much it's going to cost to train a model, but if you work with those kind of models all the time, then if I look at how big the MNIST data set is, so let's say the MNIST data set is like 100 megabytes, and it costs me like $1 to like train a model on that, then I could look at that 100 megabytes, and then I could be like, all right, well now if I'm going to do it with 20 gigs, then it'll be roughly 20, you know, whatever, like 200 times the price. So it's like if you can get a baseline on a small version of it, then you can kind of estimate it out. And yeah. Yeah. So well, there's two factors. There's the amount of data. So like if we talked about this 1,000 by like 1,000 grid of like numbers that just goes. So there's two factors. The first factor is how many numbers are you putting into this grid that are going through the grid, which is like how much data are you putting into the algorithm, and then the second factor is how big is the grid. So is it 1,000 by 1,000? Like when it comes to these PyTorch TensorFlow models, they're very customizable. So you can build one that's 1,000 by 1,000, but you can also build one that's like 5,000 by 5,000, or you know 100,000 by 100,000. Like the ChatGPT, when they say it's like whatever it is, like 100 billion parameters, like that's pretty much what they're talking about. They're talking about that's how big the grid of numbers is that the information is flowing through. So anyways, there's two factors. There's how much data are you training it with, and then what's the size of the grid? What's the size of the actual model itself? And then that will give you like how much computation is actually going to cost. Yeah.
What use cases do you personally think are being underexplored?
I mean, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of use cases. I mean, my favorite one is using AI for like health, and especially like emotional health and stuff like that. I think that a lot of times we talk about technology like making us feel worse and being addicted to our phones and stuff like that. And I think a cool way to think about it is like, how do we use this new technology to make us like feel better and healthier? So I think it's starting to become a thing, but that's like my favorite use case for AI is like actually just health in general. Um, whether that's like wearables or any sort of like sleep tracking, emotion tracking, you know, I guess stuff like that. So I think health. I mean, that's my favorite use case. Yeah.
They have on Thursday, I think, Nucleate. Are you going to that?
No, it's that.
It's like a health AI thing or talk. I think it's like this. I never been before. It's a meetup.
Oh,
Like health AI focused.
sweet. Okay. It's called Nuclei or something. What was it called?
Nucleate.
Nucleate. Yeah, that sounds okay. Probably be there. Yeah, I mean, let's talk after. I'll get the event from you. Sounds cool. Yeah. Um, any other thoughts we can kind of oh yeah, I'll show. So I put yeah, so where is this shameless plug? So I went ahead and set up a website for myself. This is an AI generated headshot. Um, so because I look way better than that, obviously, you know, it's pretty close, right? But anyway, so this is my website. I'm gonna link this at the last slide, and the contact details just kind of goes over like like brands I've worked with. This is a specific tool that is really good for building these like custom pipelines on a really big scale. Kind of different libraries. But anyway, you can go through this if you want. This will be like I publish a lot of like internal like training videos for Vanguard and stuff like that, getting people up to speed on different technologies. And yeah, and then I've done some work. Like I was saying, I built the prototype with the iPhone app and the Apple Watch app. So like more information's on here about that. Video that goes over it. So if anyone's interested in like health AI, I'm definitely interested in that. And I think there's so much that can be done there to really just make the world a better place and stuff like that. So that'd be cool. So definitely talk to me about that. And then I've got like a contact form, LinkedIn, email. Yeah, you can see that phone number, stuff like that. You know, this doesn't have enough Nicolas Cage, is what I just realized. But we can fix that. But anyway, so yeah, that's the website. And then basically, yeah, we can just keep talking. Oh, and then on my website, I have like a slot. Sorry, I have like a slot to book a call with me. If you want to like go into a specific use case more deeply. I just really like talking about this stuff. So right now, this is like it's just like free to do like a one-on-one and stuff. And yeah, because I just like to explore like what's possible, share what I know, and maybe at some point I'll start charging for it. But if I get a lot like very busy with it, but for now, I just like to talk about it. So that's there. If you can't find a time on here, then just like text me or email me. We'll find a time. And it's G Gompers 28. Yeah, where is this? Here we go. Yeah, there is. Gompers28 at Gmail. And yeah, that's that. Guess I could just leave that up there, but or that. I guess it's kind of the same. Sweet. Okay. And then yeah, and then you can get to the website there and stuff, LinkedIn. Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions, or we could just got it. Yes, you're saying using existing models for the insurance industry to do what, or to do what specifically, or
Run their existing models.
oh, like training other models to run other models.
Using this model to run other models, build other models in the body industry.
So technically, you can do that. You can for like, I think what you're saying is like if you use ChatGPT to say like ChatGPT, can you like improve this model,
Yeah.
and you paste in the code for another model.
Yeah, you teach it how to use another model.
Oh, yes, yeah. So that goes back to the idea of chaining these like APIs together. So I don't know if I need to. Yeah. So if we look at these APIs, like here's one for ChatGPT, right? And then we had I think I can just there we go. Here's the Midjourney one. So at a certain point, you can just say in the code on the back end, you can get the response from ChatGPT, and then you can just immediately take that text of response and then send it into Midjourney, just immediately. And then you could create a loop doing that. So like if you had a service, a website, and you like, you were going to generate images for someone or something, like give them advice and then generate images about that advice. Yeah, then you would just link. So it's all about like there's so much value in chaining APIs together, because it's like you're getting an entire company, what an entire company does, another entire company, and you're putting it in a loop. It's pretty crazy what you can do with that. Yeah, nice. Cool. Yeah, we'll call it here. Thanks, guys. Cool. Thanks, man. Oops.
Thank you, Greg. I guess I'll drop the mic. This is redundant. Doesn't want to let me go. All right. Thank you, Greg, for the presentation. I have one more thing I just wanted to put up on the screen for everybody who's here. Can I plug mine?
Yeah.
This is going to be helpful for everybody at home.
You just put it on top or whatever.
Right, another shameless plug. This time I hope it's not shameless because this is actually, like I said, GPT